Welcome, welcome, welcome. My name is Landon Williams, and today I'm going to show you how to continuously deploy with BYU Domains. So looking at our agenda, I will describe a problem that I've been having, and I'll describe the solution. And then I'll walk through the solution with you. Starting off, looking at the problem, when we want to deploy to BYU Domains, the steps to manually deploy are run npm run build to get those production files. We have to open our web browser. We have to go to BYU Domains. We have to go to File Manager, and we have to upload each individual file to where we want it. And it can be pretty time consuming. It makes me not want to deploy every time I make a little change. It makes me want to wait until I've created something big before I deploy, which can have its drawbacks. Looking at the solution, when we have continuous deployment set up, all we have to do is we have to run npm run build, and then we have to push to our Git repository on BYU Domains. So really simple. Now let's get into the solution. How might I myself set up continuous deployment with BYU Domains? First, we're going to have to set up SSH, then we'll set up the repository, then we'll set up the subdomain, because that's typically how I like to run new projects, is just put a subdomain. Then we will deploy our changes. So step one, let's set up our SSH. First thing that we're going to have to do is we're going to have to make sure that SSH is actually installed. So we come over here to settings, then apps, then optional features, and then just search SSH and make sure that you have this open SSH client installed. Next thing that we're going to have to do is we're going to have to create a key pair. And the way we do this is we can just come here to command prompt, and we can just run the command ssh-keygen, and it's going to ask us where we want to save it. The default location is just fine, default name. And then we'll put in our passphrase. Make it a little more secure, and there we have it. We have created our SSH keys. Now we need to add our SSH keys to BYU Domains. So we'll come over here to just our dashboard, and we'll open up SSH access. We'll manage our SSH keys, and we'll import a new key. Let's change this to tic-tac-toe. Where we're going to find this is we will need to open up a file explorer and go to users, your user, then it's going to be in the .ssh folder. That's the default location. This id.rs or _RSA is the private key. We're going to need to copy that in. The passphrase is just the one that we created earlier. Then we'll take that public key and we'll copy that in. And we'll import it. Great. Make sure that it's authorized. So authorize. Great. So now that we've set up our SSH keys, the next thing that we're going to want to do is set up our repository. So what I like to do usually is I like to create a folder for the repository first. So I'm going to open up File Manager, come here to Repositories, create a new folder. Let's call it tic-tac-toe, because that's what our React project is, or at least the example that I'm using. Once we've created that folder, we'll come back to our dashboard, go to Git version control. So we'll create a new one. We don't want to clone, we just want to create a new one. Right here, we will put that directory of the one that we just created. We'll give it a good name, and we'll create it. Now it's telling us that we need to add the repository to or the remote repository to our actual repository in VS Code. So I'm going to copy this. And before we do that, we have to do something that's kind of hard to find, but I figured it out. So you just want to do start SSH agent in the same folder as your repository on your local machine. This just makes sure that we have all the SSH keys that we need to be able to push to our BYU domain. We'll add the remote, and you can change this here to be, I like to put it maybe BYU Domains, because if I change this to BYU Domains, I can still use GitHub to handle all my pull requests, and I would just push master to this remote that we're adding right now. Next, we will git push to BYU Domain. Master. Okay. Let's put master here. So we'll input that key that we, or the passphrase that we use to create the SSH keys. Great, we set it up. And now that repository is in there, the next step is we want to set up that subdomain. So we'll come back to our dashboard. Now keep in mind, you don't have to use a subdomain. You can use any folder really on in your public HTML. I'm just going to, this is just the way I like to do it, so I'm going to do that. So we've created our subdomain. Everything's looking good. The one thing that you need to set up that's kind of hard to find is found in this article here. I'll put this link in the description for you so that you'll be able to find it. Right here, we're going to want to deploy individual files. Those individual files are going to be in the build folder after we run npm run build, because those are the static production files that you really don't need a file server or an HTTP server to serve those. You just need a static, normal web server to serve them. So you'll set up this .cpanel.yaml file to tell cpanel what to do with your repository, where to put certain files in order to deploy them. Looking at my cpanel.yaml file, this is just a common thing that you need at the beginning, but then I declare this deploy path, which is that folder that I created earlier when I set up the subdomain, and I'm going to copy all the files in the build folder to this folder here. So once we push our changes to the repository on cpanel, it's going to run this file, and it's going to copy all the files in this build folder to where we need to go. So now let's push one more time and see if that worked. If this YAML file is going to work. Come back here, go to tic-tac-toe.chanchoserver.com. Great. So it seems to be working. Let's just play a game to see if everything's going well. Okay. So you see this X1 that's kind of boring. Maybe we want to put an exclamation point. Maybe we want to put yay. Let's make that change here. Let's put an exclamation point. Yay. Then we'll save it. Let's commit that. Oh, before we commit, let's run npm run build. So this is just going to take all those files and put it into static files that we can serve. It's going to put it in the build folder for us. Great. Let's commit. Updated the status to something better. We'll commit that. Then we'll push our changes one more time. Okay, it looks like it told us that everything ran okay. So let's come back to our React app. We'll refresh it. And then let's play a game just to make sure that our changes have been saved. We'll look at that. Our continuous deployment is set up. Now all we have to do when we make a change is we need to run npm run build, we need to commit, and then we need to push to master on BYU Domains. Thank you for your time. I really hope that this tutorial has helped you. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to me on Slack on our IS542 channel. And thank you for your time.